All right, it's 6 o'clock. Let's call the meeting to order. Before roll call, I believe General Manager Shaver has a few housekeeping announcements.
Yes, thank you, President Wong. First, I want to just do a sound check. Can everybody hear me? If so, do a thumbs up. Perfect, thank you. So good evening. The ACWD Board of Directors welcomes the public's participation in this meeting this evening. My name is Robert Shaver and I serve as the General Manager. Members of the public may participate in this meeting either via the Zoom application or by telephone. If you are participating by Zoom, generally we ask that everyone mute their microphones unless speaking. You may also be placed on mute by the district secretary. The district secretary will unmute participants at the appropriate time when the board is receiving public comments. In Zoom, you will be able to view the presentation materials as they are presented to the board. And at any time, you may submit a question or raise your hand if you're muted and have questions or you would like to address the board. You can raise your hand by scrolling down, click on the participants section, and then there should be an option to raise your hand at the bottom of the list. For those of you that are participating using telephone, please refrain from making comments until prompted by the district secretary or the board president. And unless you are speaking, please put your phone on mute to assure the best sound quality for everyone. If you're using Zoom and a phone at the same time, be aware that there can be echo and feedback loop issues. Presentation slides are located on the district's website, www.acwd.org. If you have access to the website, you may download the slides and follow along that way. And lastly, if you're participating on the phone, you may press *6 to get the attention of the district secretary. This Zoom webinar will be recorded and will be made accessible to the public for future viewing. The board has 3 closed session items this evening that will be covered near the end of the meeting. While the board convenes privately in closed session, members of the public may remain in the Zoom webinar. And if you are interested in any board reports, once the closed sessions are concluded, you'll hear them then. Again, I want to welcome the public and thank you all for attending. That's it. President Wong, you may be on mute.
Yeah. So thank you, Mr. Shaver. Ms. Marcoux, roll call, please.
Director Zakwari.
Present.
Gunther.
Here.
Steffi.
Here.
Reed.
Here.
Wong.
Here. Director Wee, would you lead us in the salute to the flag, please?
Thank you. Join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Director Weed. Next is public comment. Member of the public may address the board on any issues not listed on the agenda, which are within the purview of the Alameda County Water District. A 5-minute limit is customary. Members of the public who wish to address the board on a scheduled agenda item will be given the opportunity to do so. At this point, do I have any member of the public that wish to address the board? If so, please raise your hand through the Zoom app or speak up if you're on the phone. Hearing and seeing none, let's move on to the consent calendar. Do I have a motion to add any items to the consent calendar?
I'll make the motion to add items 5.1 through 5.6 and 5.8 to the consent calendar.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Do I have a motion?
I'll move the consent calendar as amended.
Okay.
I'm not going to do roll call for the first one.
Yeah, sorry. Roll call, please, since I have a first and a second.
Director Zakwari.
Aye.
Gunther.
Aye.
Steffi.
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
Wong.
Aye. Do I have a motion to move the consent calendar as amended?
I will move as such. Second.
Cool.
Directors Zakwari.
Aye.
Gunther.
Aye.
Steffi.
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
And Wong.
Aye. So next would be item 5.7, and I believe a director has need to recuse himself.
Yes, I will be recusing myself at the advice of counsel due to a real property conflict within 1,000 feet of the item at hand.
Okay, I'm going to put you into a breakout room, Director Akbari.
Okay.
Okay, I think Director Akbari is in the breakout room because
He disappeared.
he disappeared. Okay, so item 5.7, please.
5.7, the staff recommendation is by motion adopt a resolution accepting completion of the Canyon Heights Improvements Project construction work, job 21120. We really have nothing to add other than this project was challenging. It had some site conditions that were not anticipated, but I'm very proud of how staff completed the work, and it's great to see that the project is now complete.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board?
I'll go ahead and move the staff recommendation.
Hold on just a sec. Any questions or comments from the community? Seeing and hearing none, I believe Director Gensler moved the staff recommendation.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Second.
Directors Akbari, Gunther,
Aye.
Steffi,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Wong.
Aye. Ms. Marco, can you get Director Akbari back, please?
Yes.
Thank you. I see that he's back.
I'm back.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to item 5.9, please.
Thank you, President Wong. Item 5.9 involves a resolution approving fiscal year 2020-21 pay schedules and related documents. And I believe that Jennifer Solito was going to cover this item, but if not, I'm happy to do so.
I am here. Hi, everybody. Jennifer Solito, HR Risk Manager. This is our annual item to have the board publicly adopt all of ACWD's salary schedules. So we have changes this year are the 3% COLA that goes into effect for all employees at the start of this fiscal year 2021. So that applies to management, confidential, and professional, our unrepresented job classifications, as well as our two union groups, Operating Engineers Local Number 3 and ACWD Operators Association. And those COLAs were approved by the board during fiscal year 2018-19. And then the pay schedules are required to be adopted annually by the board so that we post them online, publicly available as well. And then these schedules also include the recent 3% salary increase for the general manager's contract that was approved for implementation on June 11th, 2020, so this last month. Any questions?
Questions or comments from the board?
No.
All right, hearing none, do I have any questions or comments from members of the public? If you wish to address the board on this issue, please raise your hand through the Zoom app or speak up. I am not seeing any hands or not hearing anything, so okay, do I have a motion?
I'll go ahead and move the staff recommendation.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Directors Akbari,
Aye.
Gunther,
Aye.
Steffi,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Wong.
Aye. All right, item 5.10.
Thank you, President Wong. Item 5.10 involves the authorization of a professional services agreement for consulting services for the groundwater basin flow model upgrade and alternative update project. And presenting this item will be Thomas Nizer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shaver. The groundwater basin model upgrade and alternative update project will upgrade the district's existing groundwater model platform and inform the alternative update that must be submitted to the Department of Water Resources on January 1st, 2022. The alternative update will include informational improvements and incorporate actions recommended by DWR. The upgraded model will also be utilized as a planning tool for ongoing management of the groundwater basin. Consulting services are necessary for upgrading the groundwater model platform and assistance in preparing the alternative update. There is adequate funding for the expenditure in the capital improvements program under the alternative update and model upgrade project. The project is also partially funded by a Proposition 68 grant award of up to $500,000. The project will help meet the district's strategic plan goal 2.1, maintain and enhance sustainability and reliability of local and regional water supplies. Recommendation by motion, authorize the general manager to execute a professional services agreement with Woodard & Curran in an amount not to exceed $840,239 for consulting services for the groundwater basin flow model upgrade and alternative update project job 10100. And as a point of clarification, the consultant's name is actually Woodard Curran Incorporated.
Thank you, Mr. Nizer. Do I have any questions or comments from the board?
No.
All right, I am not hearing anything. Do I have any questions or comments from members of the public? If you wish to address the board on this item, please raise your hand through the Zoom app or to speak up on the phone. Seeing and hearing none, do I have a motion?
I'll move staff recommendation.
I'll second.
Director Aquari,
Aye.
Member,
Aye.
Steffi,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
and Huang.
Aye, moving on, item 511.
Thank you, President Wong. Item 511 involves the authorization of agreement for security services, and Kurt Arends will be presenting this, at least starting this.
Thank you, Mr. Shaver. Directors, welcome tonight. This is a continuation of our security services contract, which provides our security guards for district facilities. In summary, the district's current agreement for security services will expire on July 31st, 2020. The district desires to continue these services through a new security services agreement. Request for proposals was issued on May 11th, and 3 of the 8 responding firms were interviewed by a technical review team. Based on the criteria in the RFP, Creative Security Company, Inc. was the highest scoring vendor for security services. The new agreement will provide services including security dispatch and 2 patrol guards during non-business hours to secure district property, infrastructure, and employees. On an as-needed basis, the services will also provide access control, fire watch, security, incident response and investigation, and assist the district in addressing trespassing and encampment issues on district property. The agreement's for a 2-year base term and allows for up to 3 one-year options. The total cost of the security services for the initial 2-year term is $1,300,924. There's sufficient funds in the fiscal year 2021 budget for this expenditure, and funds will be included in future budgets for future years. Approval of this agreement will help meet the district strategic plan goal 1.3, continuously improve emergency preparedness and response capabilities. So staff's recommendation tonight is by motion, authorize the general manager to enter into an agreement with Creative Security Company, Inc. for security services for a base term of 2 years for an amount not to exceed $1,300,924, and authorize the general manager to execute up to 3 one-year extensions for a total not to exceed amount of $3,367,392. And myself and Caroline Ebular, our emergency and security services planner, are available tonight to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Arends. Do I have any questions or comments from the board?
I do have a question.
Director Ari?
How many security incidents, that being trespassing or vandalism of some sort, did we encounter in the last year? And what's the typical protocol for one of the security service members when they do encounter someone who's trespassing or engaging in vandalism?
Well, I'll give a quick intro and then I'll ask Caroline to see if she's got any specific details. With the dispatch service, basically, if we get a call or we get a call from a member of the public, we've actually gotten calls from homeless people who are along the creeks or notifying us of, holes in our fences or violations, or from other even directors about homeless encampments. We can call the dispatch and they will dispatch the security guard to the location to investigate and, see what's going on. They're not paid to, make arrests or necessarily always confront the people. If they witness something, they can call police services or other, support to come in. As far as the number of incidents, I'll ask Caroline if she has any statistics on the number of calls that we've gotten specific to that.
Hi, good afternoon. So I don't have any numbers for the actual incidents. I've taken a note so I can go ahead and find that out from our security services, but the different types of calls that we've had: trespassing, fire watch, alarm responses. So all of our alarms at different facilities that go off, whether it's on hours, off hours, access control, if it's employees or contractors that need to get access to facilities. They also do video monitoring. So we have alarm services that are motion activated. So they review footage and then they dispatch and send out a guard as needed. In addition to that, we get patrol reports in the morning of the previous day's patrol reports, as well as any alarm response or any incident reports specific to an incident that happened that a guard experiences.
And are the guards armed in any way?
No, they're typically not armed. This contract has the allowance that we can request that. And I think it came up in an earlier discussion with the committee that would go through some formal approval process before that took place. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Director Akbari. Any other questions or comments from the board?
Yes, I do.
Director Sampson.
How many of our properties are covered under this security arrangement?
This security service is for the district and they can be dispatched to any property, for any reason that we want. They do have a patrol that they'll do during off hours and make rounds around certain district facilities. During the first month of this new contract, we'll actually be reviewing the standard operating procedures and the routes for these patrols. Typically, it's along the creek, along our manned facilities, the headquarters building, but we can include any properties that we want them to check on and secure.
Second, do we have any other outstanding security arrangement deals with other firms?
And we have different alarm services, and maybe Caroline can jump in as far as what other alarm services, camera services we have.
So as far as security guard service, it's only Overton that we have. And then we have different contracted services. So Bay Alarm we use for video alarms at some facilities. We have Sentry that does burglar, chemical, and fire alarm monitoring. We have Genetech, which is our in-house contracted video monitoring system. And off the top of my head, those are the main ones that we keep in contact with.
So, yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, clarify. Yeah, we have services for alarm systems like fire alarm services, burglar alarm services, but this is the only security guard contract that we have.
Mm-hmm. And the third question I have is related to a few experiences that I've had coming back into the district late at night, returning a vehicle or on the weekend, and the alarm is going off continuously at the headquarter building. I was there on one occasion when I came into the building, and Ed Stevenson was there present. And there never seems to be anybody available to turn off the alarm or figure out how someone can respond to turning off that alarm, or even a phone number that's present, to say, hey, here, call this number. Okay. How do we deal with that?
Whoop.
So at, oh, go ahead.
Caroline.
Oh,
Go ahead.
so at each alarm panel at headquarters, there's a little, it's like a clear box on top, and it has a business card that says to call Overton if you need help arming or disarming any of the alarms. We don't have a stationary guard at headquarters for normal business. Right now, we do currently for off hours. But so if an alarm were to go off over here, Overton gets a call to their dispatch from Sentry, and then Overton will dispatch out and send a guard to turn on or off the alarms. But they'll also have to do a patrol around because sometimes some zones are armed, but if somebody is coming into one zone and disarming that one because they're working in the headquarters, then all of the rest of the alarms are still armed, but that specific zone is disarmed because there's an employee working there.
And not to be too persistent here, but what's the cause of the alarm going off in the headquarter building? You know, I've encountered it quite a few times.
So it's different zones. So let's say that you're in the lab where I sit. We have one zone that is armed and disarmed. And so if I come in and I disarm it, it's only the lab area. But then if I want to walk to the bathroom, I'll end up setting off a couple of alarms on the way if those ones are also armed. That might be it.
Oh, I see. So how do we prevent that from occurring in the future?
Mm-hmm. So there's alarm keypads at each one. We can get like maybe a map to provide on it, so that as you're walking through the building, you'll know where the alarm pads are, and you can go there and turn it on or off. And I believe each employee has their own code for when they come into the building. So if you need a code, we can go ahead and get that set up for you as well.
Okay, thank you very much for answering the questions.
Thank you, Director Sethi. Director Wee, do you have any questions?
No, just a quick comment. At the committee meeting, when this was briefed to us in the water ops, on the issue of arming of our security, it was noted that we would be developing some written protocols that if it was determined by the general manager that arming of the security was warranted, that the board would be informed that we had a situation that warranted arming of security. I believe there's general agreement on that point.
I believe that is part of the protocol that's being developed, correct, Mr. Arantz?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Thank you, Director Wee, for the comment. Thank you, Mr. Arantz. Do I have any other questions or comments from the directors? If not, do I have any questions or comments from our members of the public? I am not seeing any. So with that, do I have a motion for this item?
I'll move the staff recommendation to approve it. Item 5.11.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Director Zakbari,
Aye.
Gunther,
Aye.
Sethi,
Aye.
Wee,
All right.
Wong.
Aye. With that, let's move on to item 5.12.
Thank you, President Wong. Item 512 involves the authorization of professional services agreement for engineering services for the SCADA replacement project. And I believe in her inaugural experience in this role, Reka Ipagunta, our project engineering manager, will be presenting this item.
Thank you, Mr. Shaver. Good evening, everyone. So the district utilizes supervisory control and data acquisition systems to operate water supply, production, and distribution facilities throughout the district service area, including treatment plants, water production wells, storage facilities, booster and pressure regulating stations, groundwater recharge and fish passage facilities, and interconnections to other water utilities. In total, 5 major SCADA systems, including distribution, treatment plant 1, treatment plant 2, blending facility, and desalination facility, and 5 kiosk-style SCADA systems for fish passage facilities are used to control and automate these various facilities at the district. So the SCADA replacement project will proactively address reliability, maintainability, security, compatibility, and technology issues of the existing SCADA systems by replacing all of the district's SCADA systems. Engineering services are required at this time to support prerequisite tasks such as documenting the district standards and practices, defining the new SCADA system functionality, selecting a new SCADA software platform, and planning for operation, management, and configuration. Staff recently completed a competitive procurement process for these professional services and also services required to support piloting the new SCADA system at one of the district's facilities and then implementing the new SCADA system over multiple fiscal years throughout the district, following any adjustments resulting from the pilot work. Staff proposes to award the prerequisite tasks as a first step and then later amend the professional services agreement to include the pilot work and implementation support in a phased approach through fiscal year 26-27. Staff is requesting that the board authorize the general manager to execute the base contract, including the prerequisite work, and also authorize the addition of support through the pilot phase through a future amendment should the district be satisfied with the services to be provided. Future implementation phases would be added by similar future amendments and would require additional board authority. So there is adequate funding in the approved 2-year project budget for the work. The project was reviewed with the Engineering and Information Technology Committee on April 15, 2020. Board authorization of these services will help meet the district's strategic plan goal 1.1, efficiently manage and maintain our infrastructure to ensure reliability. So today's staff is recommending by motion authorize the general manager to execute a professional services agreement with TJC and Associates INC in an amount not to exceed $646,860 for engineering and professional services for prerequisite tasks, and execute a future amendment to this professional services agreement to include services for design, SCADA system procurement support, pilot implementation, and pilot evaluation support in an amount not to exceed $277,110 should the district be satisfied with the services to be provided for the SCADA replacements project, job 21266. With this, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Ipagunta. Do I have any questions or comments from the directors?
Not for me.
All right, I am not hearing any. Do I have any questions or comments from members of our community? If you wish to do so, please raise your hand through the Zoom app or speak up if you're on the phone. I am not seeing any. So with that, do I have a motion from the board?
I'll move staff recommendation.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Gina, I think you might be.
Akbari,
Aye.
Gunther,
Aye.
Steffi,
Aye.
Lee,
All right.
and Huang.
Aye. With that, let's move on to reports. Item 6.1, board committee reports. Do I have any?
President Wong, I'm going to step out just for 1 minute, okay?
Would you like to take a break or do you have any?
No, I'm just going to step out for 1 minute. Continue.
Okay. So does any of the directors have questions or comments on the board committee reports? I am not seeing any. Does any member of the public have any questions or comments on the board committee reports? Not seeing any. How about item 6.2, operational reports? Do I have any questions or comments from the directors on any of the operational reports?
The harness once again looks very good this month. So thank you.
Do I have any? Okay, I think that's it from the directors. Then do I have any questions or comments from members of the public on any of the board operations reports? I am not seeing or hearing any. So with that, let's move on to item 6.3, staff presentation, please.
Thank you, President Wong. Item 6.3.1, Jonathan Wunderlich will start us off on providing the board with some customer service updates.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Shaver. It's been about 2 years since The district implemented its electronic billing and payment system, and we thought it was time to come to the board and provide an update on how that's been working. And also, you know, in this unique operating environment, there are a number of other customer service issues that we wanted to review with the board this evening. And so I'm going to turn it over to Katrina Bates, our Customer Service and Systems Manager, who will guide us through the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Wunderlich. Let me share my presentation with you. Good evening, members of the board, members of the public, and staff. As Mr. Wunderlich said, I'm Katrina Bates, the district's Customer Service and Systems Manager. Thank you for having me this evening. Tonight, I will be reporting on some customer service operations. Sorry. The presentation will include an update on where we are today with electronic bill presentment and payment, EBPP in short, which launched in July 2018. I will also provide an overview of the district's current collection activities in relation to COVID-19. And finally, I will highlight a couple of customer service policies for your review. I'm happy to report that EBPP has been really successful since officially launching to our customers July 9, 2018. As of June 30th, we have 58,690 customers registered and actively using the portal, of which a little over 28,000 customers are signed up for automatic payment, and about 21,000 are receiving their bills through e-billing. We have been working with public affairs and promoting electronic billing and automatic payment, and in the past year, we have seen approximately 3,600 customers sign up for e-billing and over 8,000 customers sign up for automatic payment. We have plans to continue to work with public affairs in promoting these features, along with the newly added feature of Apple Pay and Google Pay. EBPP has been a true success story in customer adoption. Since implementation, 72% of customers are paying their bills electronically. That amounts to over 740,000 total payments for over $130 million. Our customers have provided feedback and are very happy with this implementation and continue to be thankful for the updated features and benefits the system has to offer. You may ask what that means for the district. Well, due to EBPP and prior to COVID-19, we had seen a 20% reduction in phone calls and a 30% reduction in foot traffic. Our customers are now able to pay by text and are contacting the district through electronic means. In addition, we now have more service options available on the customer portal, which has resulted in a 58% increase of online service requests. For us in the customer service field, it signals that the customers are looking for more ways to connect with the district through electronic platforms like chat, email, and online requests. Moving on to our current collection efforts for past due accounts. In order to accommodate customer hardship due to COVID-19, the district has halted all collection activities due in part to Executive Order N-40-42, which suspended the authority of water utility agencies to disconnect customers for non-payment until further notice. We are still sending one past due notice to overdue customers, but the late fee is automatically waived and no further notices or collection activity is taking place. We have also extended the time available to pay bills and make an account current. This brings me to our water revenue aging report. Past due accounts are monitored by staff on a monthly basis. Prior to COVID-19, there was on average approximately $300,000 in past due amounts. Also prior to COVID-19, the vast majority of accounts were paid on time. Due to COVID-19, we expected and are seeing past due balances increase. Since shelter-in-place orders started, the current average is $750,000 in past due accounts. This is primarily due to an increase in past due balances greater than 30 days. In June, we saw an increase of approximately $100,000 in past due balances, which is about 1% of the total amount we bill on a monthly basis. There's also been a steady increase in credit card usage this past 4 months, which could be an indication that customers are struggling to pay their bills. Though collection activities have been put on hold for the time being, we are starting to discuss when and how to reinstate these types of activities. Which brings me to highlight these 2 board policies that will be tested once we resume collection activities. First is the collection and residential water service termination policy, which was created due to SB 998 and was newly implemented January 1st. This policy provides information on the different collection activities and timelines, and provides information on the bill dispute process. The bill dispute process gives the manager of finance, in consultation with the general manager, authority to adjust the bill amount. Since the second one is the leak adjustment policy, which provides information on the process of obtaining a credit should a customer experience a leak on their property. This policy states the maximum allowable credit amount of either $200 or $500 based on service type, while providing the general manager authority for exceptions. Staff feels these policies are reasonable, but wanted to bring them to light because we are experiencing and seeing more customers who are not able to pay their bills. When we resume collection activities, these policies will be tested. As an example, if a customer claims they had a leak and requested the district to waive 100% of excess usage, the current policy states the general manager has the authority to provide up to 50% adjustment of excess consumption. Another example is a customer claims that they cannot pay their bills and want balances to be forgiven. Current policy provides the manager of finance, in consultation with the general manager, authority to adjust the bill amount. Staff feels that these policies are generous and don't feel any changes need to be made, but we would like to confirm the board is comfortable with these policies. So at this time, I kindly request if you could share your thoughts on these 2 policies.
Directors, who wants to start?
It's John Weed. I would suggest that we not put any limitation at all on the general manager's ability to make adjustments on a bill. There may be some extraordinary circumstances where even the 50% is too restrictive.
Director Weed, just to
I would delete the percentage amount.
Just to clarify, that's related to the leak adjustment policy, not inability to pay bill, correct?
Yeah, right. The ability to waive, well, there's certain abilities too, but on that is where we have a limitation on how much the general manager can waive and why. There may be circumstances where even that is not fair.
Okay.
Can I ask a clarifying question based on Director Weed's comments?
Yes, Director.
So if I understood correctly, there's 2 limitations on the general manager. The first related to the water service termination policy, up to $200 can be waived. And then on the leak adjustment policy, it's 50% of the bill. Did I understand that correctly?
No, so there is no limitation on the water termination policy. So the manager of finance, including in consultation with the general manager, has the authority to adjust any amount of the bill. It's the 200 and the 500 is for the leak adjustment if the customer claims they have a leak.
Yeah,
Understood.
And so what happens is, you know, if a customer calls up customer service, says I had a leak, at kind of the staff level, the customer service rep could only do 50% of the excess usage up to that $200 limit. But with the authority of the general manager, we could do a full 50%, even if it's over the 200.
My point being that there may be circumstances where even that is too restrictive, that it be fair to all concerned, particularly if the leak is extraordinary and you find someone is economically disadvantaged with a huge bill, but at no fault of their own. Or even a church or some other group, nonprofit, that suddenly has a bill because someone has, for whatever reason, damage, vandalism, whatever other reason there might be a leak. So I would hope that we could just simply delete the 50% when it comes to the general manager's authority.
Actually, I'm okay with what John said too. I think there can be circumstances, extraordinary circumstances, and that if we have that option available, I'm sure general manager would be very judicious with any type of use of that. Or so I'd be supportive of what John's suggesting.
Likewise, I'm in agreement with Director Weed and Director Gunther. I'd be supportive of striking that limitation.
Thank you, Director Gunther and Akbari. Director Sethi?
Katrina, I want to thank you for an excellent update presentation. And I am in agreement with Director Weed and other directors as well. May I ask where you're reporting from? Because I don't recognize the district facility.
Yeah, that's actually a Zoom background. Currently, I'm sitting in my bedroom.
Oh, darn it, I got fooled again. All right, thank you.
You're
looks
welcome.
good. It looks good.
Yeah, I downloaded it from Mr. Google.
Oh, geez, okay.
Director Sethi, and I am in concurrence with the rest of the directors. I support the current policy, and I think, Mr. Shaver, you hear a consensus from the board that we would like to adjust the leak adjustment policy and remove the 50% reimbursement amount. So can you please bring that back as an agenda item?
Sure. When we come back with our, I think we would come back when we go through the rates process on these policies. Is that correct, Mr. Wonderlick?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be one avenue. That's when we would typically adjust the rate and fee schedule. We're evaluating a number of customer service related items right now. So, it could be in a few months, we're ready to bring several items together. That could be another option. But what I can tell the board is that because the bill dispute process is more flexible, we, even before we bring it back to the board, we will have some flexibility to use that bill dispute process to consider unique circumstances before we bring an official change to the leak adjustment policy back to the board.
And I also might point out that you're putting a lot of faith in the general manager's ability to not only fairly address specific issues, but also to make sure that we're being fair to customers in sort of a global sense. In other words, not just rewarding customers that are the squeaky wheels, so to speak. So we'll obviously think through that, and it'll be something that kind of evolves a little bit over time. The other thing I want to point out is, of course, this does not eliminate the possibility that a customer could appeal to the board itself, but we will strive to be as reasonable and as consistent as we can be.
Thank you. Just a quick comment from John Weed. My understanding is that we have never exceeded $2,500 a year, and adjustments for due to leaks within the system for non-water. So the dollar amounts are, in my mind, minuscule.
Yeah, so I can't confirm that specific dollar amount, but I can definitely agree with the general concept that on a scale of our total billings, amounts adjusted through leaks are very small.
And I can also tell you that most customers, when they receive a 50%, break off the sort of unanticipated use, are very grateful for that. And given the issue that Director Weed points out, that our variable costs are, relatively small relative to our fixed costs, I think it's easy to justify the 50%. So again, we'll bring this back with a number of other policies at the appropriate time.
You'll excuse me, but I can't miss the opportunity to say that it's really a double-edged sword. It's the revenues that are lost that are really the, when we think of conservation and other elements that we need to keep in mind.
Thank you, Director Wee. Thank you, Mr. Shaver. Since we're sort of taking a break in the presentation, I'll take this opportunity to ask if any members of our public have questions or comments.
President Huang, I had one more comment.
All right, Director.
I'll make it very brief. I just wanted to commend customer service and our finance department on EBPP. I've heard very positive feedback from members of the community, and clearly, looking at the registrations that we've had and how much utilization we're getting from the platform, I think it's been, like you said, it's been a success story for our district. So I just wanted to say thank you for helping make that a success.
Thanks, Director Akbari. Our customers are very happy, and we hear it every day. So they're really happy, and I'm confident moving forward that as we implement new features for the customer portal, they'll be even happier.
And it's something we're really excited about, that we've got 72% of our customers paying electronically. That suggests to me that once we have that customer portal up and running, we will have a very high percentage making use of it, on the AMI data.
Yes.
Thank you. So let me poll the members of our public. Does any members of public has a question or comment? I see Mr. Tank Roof Inspector has a comment.
Thank you, President Wong. I just wanted to make a quick, a brief comment.
Excuse me, sir. Can you please speak your name and
yes.
for the record?
Yes, for the record, Ken Nishimura. Address is on record with the district in Fremont. My brief comment is I do concur with the board's conclusion that there should not be an arbitrary limit placed on the general manager to deal with unanticipated leaks or usage. However, I do agree with the general manager's comment, and I would again ask that the district consider the moral hazard if leaks are fully reimbursed, right? We don't want to see customers defer maintenance on items that they should have repaired that lead to a large leak, and foist that responsibility and burden of that leak fully on the district and its customers. So I trust that the general manager is aware of that, and based on his comments, I believe that's the case. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions or comments from our community members? Hearing none, Ms. Bates, I think you received the feedback you want, correct?
I did. Thank you so much for the feedback and for having me this evening. I appreciate it. And if there's any additional comments, I'm available for that as well.
Thank you, Ms. Bates. Any last minute questions or comments for Ms. Bates from the directors? Hearing none, thank you so very much for a great presentation.
Thank you, Director Wong.
And all the hard work. All right, let's move on to item 6.3.2.
Thank you, President Wong. Item 6.3.2, I think, is a story about if you look for something hard enough, you might find it. And I think it's sort of a double-edged sword. It's better to know than not know. And I thought the board was very wise to authorize staff to do the additional PFAS and PFOA testing. And Mr. Arens, as well as Mr. Wickham, will be explaining what we have found and what are our next steps.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Shaver. President Wong and members of the board, we want to provide a quick update on the voluntary PFAS sampling that the district has recently conducted. If you recall, back in March of 2020, which I think was our last live board meeting in person, we outlined the approach for voluntary sampling for PFAS, our sources, and our treated water. That sampling was initiated in early June, and we began receiving lab results late last month. Because this is a forever chemical, of course, we found it throughout the environment. It's not surprising. We also found it in our system. I've asked our production manager, Mike Wickham, to provide the board with a quick review of what PFAS are, where we sampled, what we found, and what this means going forward. So I'll now turn it over to Production Manager Mike Wickham.
Good evening, members of the board, members of the public. So I'm going to provide a quick update on our voluntary monitoring program, voluntary sampling program for PFAS. So per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, abbreviated as PFAS, are a group of man-made chemicals. It's a family of chemicals. It's found in a wide range of consumer products, including food packaging, nonstick products, waxes, paints, cleaning products, firefighting foams, water repellent fabrics, and personal care products.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. Mike, did you want to share the presentation?
Oh, technical difficulties. Let me try this again. All right, thank you. Apologies. First virtual board meeting. Okay, let me start this again. Per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS, PFAS. It's a group of family of man-made chemicals found in a wide range of products used by consumers, including food packaging, nonstick products, waxes, paints, cleaning products, firefighting foams, water repellent fabrics, and personal care products. It's also used in industries, including chrome plating, electronics manufacturing. These chemicals are specifically designed to be resistant to heat, water, and oil, and they're known as forever chemicals because they're extremely stable and do not readily break down in the environment or the human body. There's over 6,000 types of PFAS chemicals, and the types that are the most prevalent and of greatest concern are perfluorooctanic acid, or PFOA, and perfluorooctane sulfonate, or PFOS. Those two chemicals do have potential health effects, including reproductive, developmental, liver, kidney, and immunological effects, amongst others, including increased cholesterol levels, low infant birth rates, and cancer. And they also have notification levels established for them by the California State Water Resource Control Board Division of Drinking Water. And those notification levels and response levels are set very low. They're set in the parts per trillion. So just kind of want to put a part per trillion into perspective. So it's a very small amount. There's some examples there as far as what a part per trillion is, and a few more are 1 part per trillion is about 4 grains of sugar put into 1 Olympic-sized swimming pool. It's also 1 square inch in 250 square miles. So to kind of put that in the perspective of our service area, that'd be the equivalent of about 0.4 square inches in the ACWD service area. So our entire service area, a little less than half an inch square is 1 part per trillion. So it's a very small amount. But that's what the detection limits and even the notification levels are set for this family of chemicals. So for our voluntary sampling plan, remember the sampling was voluntary. We wanted to sample proactively and learn if there were PFOA or PFOS in our water supplies to ensure that the best water quality was available to our customers, and to take any measures to treat our sources and supplies if necessary. Also, though PFAS are currently unregulated, there are regulations on the horizon. Both PFOA and PFOS, the EPA has issued a determination to regulate them. And additionally, there was public interest from our ratepayers in the potential levels or presence of PFAS in our waters. So our sampling plan, just to go over it, review it quickly, we wanted to do all of our sources and all of our all the treated water entering the system. So it's all of our production wells or desal wells and the entry points. So the Division of Drinking Water is currently conducting a phased investigation as well on PFAS occurrences, and they've issued monitoring orders to some water providers that have sources that have been identified as potentially susceptible to PFAS. Our sources were not in that group, but we felt it would be responsible and protective of public health to go forward and do voluntary monitoring. We did use an outside service for sampling due to the high potential for cross-contamination because of just the prevalent nature of PFAS in almost every product and the very low reporting levels. We used an outside sampling service to minimize the fear of cross-contamination. And just for some perspective, most of the monitoring we do for constituents in water is in the parts per million or parts per billion range. So the parts per trillion is definitely unique to, so far, to PFAS chemicals. So we conducted the round of sampling on June 9th and 10th this year. And the sampling is not complete yet. As a matter of fact, we just sampled Maori well number 1 today, and Maori 9 is still outstanding. That'll be sampled when available, probably this fall or winter. The sampling was conducted over multiple days to accommodate variable system demands and operations during the sampling. And you notice up there the locations we sampled. We even included Darvon 1, even though Darvon 1 is not currently providing water to our desalination facility. It does have the potential to do so in the future, so we wanted to be inclusive. And we don't have the capability to analyze for these compounds in-house, so we have to send them out, and the turnaround time for results is generally 3 weeks. We got our results a little bit sooner than that for this round, so we're fortunate. And here are the results. The table is listed on the left side are the sources, and on the right side are the treated water results. So the good news is that no ACWD customers are receiving water with levels of PFAS, either PFOS or PFOA, at or above the notification level. So all of our sources are beneath the notification level or non-detect. So at the wells supplying water to the blending facility, there were PFOA detections that range between non-detect and 6.3 parts per trillion. 6.3 is above the notification level of 5.1 parts per trillion. And, but there were no detections of PFOA in the blended water, so the treated water leaving that facility was non-detect. There were PFOS detections between non-detection and 13 parts per trillion, also in those wells, which is also above the notification level of 6.5 parts per trillion. And there were detections in the blending water between 5.3 and 6.3 parts per trillion, which, though detectable, is below the notification level. At the well supplying water of the desalination plant, there were PFOA detections between non-detect and 3.2 parts per trillion, all below the notification level. And there were also PFOS detections in those wells between 2.4 and 9.1 part per trillion. And there were no detections of PFOA or PFOS in the treated water for the desalination facility. There were also no detections of PFOS or PFOA in the surface water plant, either the raw coming into the plant or the effluent at water treatment plant number 2, or in the San Francisco PUC water. Those were all non-detect. But to summarize, some of our groundwater sources did have detectable levels of PFOS and PFOA above the notification level, but all of our treated water delivered to our customers was either non-detect or the blending facility detected at levels which were below the notification level. So next steps. So in the near term, when we got the results, we did contact the Division of Drinking Water to discuss the initial findings and the next steps, including notification requirements. And the Division of Drinking Water confirmed that we were to use the sample results from the treated water samples to determine notification requirements. And those are all below the notification level. Also, because this was a voluntary sampling effort, the results of this round of sampling do not need to be included in our annual consumer confidence report. As we do have PFAS detections, these results may result in a future monitoring order for PFAS compounds as part of the Division of Drinking Water's phased investigation into the occurrence of PFAS. And there's been, since we updated the committee last Wednesday, and now the Division of Drinking Water has reached out to us and has requested that we provide the results of this voluntary sampling effort electronically to them, which would assist them with their statewide evaluation of PFAS occurrence and allow them to factor these results into their analysis of technical and economic feasibility for a future MCL determination. They're also interested in a discussion about a voluntary PFAS sampling program that would help meet their data collection needs. We do intend to work with the Division of Drinking Water as we develop a monitoring program to both track PFAS levels and assist us in identifying the source of PFAS. Because we, as part of our near-term steps, we're also interested in investigating the source of this, and that it's going to require future monitoring. We plan to update the ACWD website with a PFAS section that includes a fact sheet and a link to the sampling results. And also in the longer term, we're going to look at operational impacts as demands increase and potential treatment alternatives. So the variability in the blended water PFOS levels were really dependent on well combinations. We'll be evaluating potential operational impacts on the blending facility. And once those impacts are better defined, we intend to share them in the future with the Operations and Water Quality Committee. Myself and environmental engineer answer any questions.
All right, so thank you, Mr. Wickham. Do I have any questions or comments from the board?
Not from me.
John Weed.
Director Weed?
If I understood correctly, you were saying that it takes 3 weeks for us to get the results for this very sensitive test. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
My concern is from an operational standpoint, if we have a problem either going offline or coming back online, the 3-week time frame strikes me as being long. And is there, do we have any options or initiatives to try and reduce that 3-week time frame?
Sir, we can elect for a test with a shorter turnaround time. So we technically do have that option. However, this is with organics. This is a monitoring for organics, and they often have turnaround times of a similar duration. What these results are used for is not so much determining like an acute issue that we might have to make a quick response to, but rather to determining things like treatment techniques and operational process changes to minimize or reduce those going forward. So,
however, if we exceeded the max, we would have to do an immediate shutdown, would we not?
At the levels we're at,
well, not at, but I mean, if we theoretically, if we hit a max, we'd have a problem.
Yes. So our ranges that we're at. So like so far, there is no maximum contaminant level set for these, but the response level, which is for PFOS 40 parts per trillion, and for PFOA 10 parts per trillion. If we were to exceed those, and calculation of those exceedances is actually done on what they call a quarterly running annual average, which means you need 4 quarters worth of data that are above, and not technically 4 quarters. If one of the initial results was high enough, we would need all 4 quarters, but those exceedances are calculated based on an annual average, sir.
So if I may just interject here. Right now, Director Weed, we have one set of results. It's a snapshot in time. Yeah. So when staff is talking about doing some additional voluntary monitoring, that will help us determine if there are any trends or if this is just sort of background noise PFAS level, which it very well may likely be. So I think what we need to do is some additional monitoring and some of the other tasks that Mr. Wickham identified, and then we'll have a better idea of where we stand, and then we can sort of make some of those determinations on quicker turnaround testing if it seems more variable, and some of the other issues that you raised.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Director Wee. Any other questions or comments from the directors? I am not seeing or hearing any. Do I have any questions or comments from members of the public? I am not seeing or hearing any either. I just want to say thank you to staff. I have the privilege of being in on this presentation at a committee meeting. And thank you for all the good work that you're doing and for willing to do a source study to figure out where the PFOA and PFOS come from. That would help us answer and questions from our community and make them feel better about the drinking water source. So thank you for the hard work.
Thank you, ma'am.
With that, let's move on to the next item.
Thank you, President Wong. Our next presentation, item 6.3.3, involves a request for exchange of ACWD's SFPUC individual supply guarantee, ISG. So leading this will be Mr. Nizer. And then depending on the outcome, I may have a few comments for your consideration as well. So thank you, Mr. Nizer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shaver. As the board, at least some of the more tenured members of the board may remember, occasionally we get requests from folks largely on the peninsula looking for water to support a development and have a hard time getting water to the peninsula, but they can find water somewhere else in California, and they often come to us as well as some other agencies that have access to the Delta as well as have some ISG with the San Francisco system, and ask if we'd be interested in making an exchange for that supply. We haven't had one in a few years. We received one and we wanted to make the board aware because this is a big public discussion. There's multiple agencies being presented with this and it is out there. So we want to make the board aware that we've been approached and to seek direction on whether or not the board would like us to further pursue this. Little overview. So staff has been contacted by the Baylands LLC, which is a land development and property management corporation in the city. And they're looking to acquire water from the SFPUC system for a project that actually crosses county boundaries in both San Francisco and San Mateo County. It's on the Brisbane city of San Francisco border. The project proponent has acquired water off of the Stanislaus River, and they're looking for an exchange agent. And that's why they've contacted ACWD, amongst other agencies. The project is called the Baylands Project, and I don't know if you can see my mouse, but if you look right on the bay edge, there's a yellow outlined area. Most of it is former landfill, and that's the project location. It's a huge project. There's 4,000, nearly 4,000 housing units of commercial activities, industrial activities. The housing numbers, I think, would constitute a more than doubling of the resident population of the city of Brisbane, to give you a sense of how large this is. The water that has been acquired by the project proponent is a pre-1914 water right off the Stanislaus River by the Oakdale Irrigation District. And what has made this in the past, when these things come through, they often have a fatal flaw, like it's water that can't be wheeled. Interesting thing about this is it's water that can be wheeled both through the Delta or potentially with a wheeling agreement through the SFPUC regional water system. So this puts it in a different category than past offers. You know, at a cursory look, we've had a few discussions with the folks. You know, there are some potential benefits for ACWD. You know, what's going on right now is some discussions with amending our contract with the PUC, and notably a potential to, if we were to sell ISG, also reduce a minimum purchase obligation, which would save the district a lot of money right now. It is a pre-14 water right, so it actually has higher reliability than the SFPUC supply, which is, as you know, our most reliable supply. It has those multiple wheeling routes, as I mentioned. And there's other beneficial terms that could be negotiated if the district really were to want to pursue this. Of course, the risks are somewhat obvious. You know, it's always exchanging a known for an unknown. And one of the major outliers is that we've got the still outstanding settlements on the Bay Delta Water Quality Plan, which neither here nor there in terms of what would mean for this particular deal as a pre-14 water right. It's just huge uncertainty that's out there. And of course, by bringing in water off of a new system, there's always going to be special interest groups that we're not familiar with. And we've inquired as to whom those parties might be and haven't found anything, but there's always somebody who's going to, you know, have an opinion. So other considerations, we have contacted both the SFPUC as well as BOSCA, which represents the wholesale interest for the PUC system, and none of them have revealed any particular stated opposition to this idea if ACWD were to entertain something like this. So far, it doesn't appear to be like a fatal flaw there. As I mentioned, there are proposed amendments to the water supply agreement, the master agreement with the SFPUC. We had an extensive meeting today with legal counsel as well and the general managers. And certain elements of that amendment would be helpful for looking at possibly making a deal if the district were interested. But there's a lot of questions remaining and issues that would need to be resolved. And so before we wanted to go any further, just poking around at this, we wanted to bring this to the board and get direction from the board to see if the board was actually interested in us going further with analyzing option here, obviously without any sort of commitment, but just finding out more about what a deal might be. If the board were to request more information, immediate things we would do is hire a water resources specialist, an expert in water transfers, to kind of kick the tires, investigate the supply, and report back to us, including a legal review. Make sure it's real water that can be transferred and has previously been transferred. We would take some staff time to analyze this a little bit more than we already have. And then we would have to meet with the SFPUC as well as other interested and affected parties. And the project proponent has actually already proposed to fund a pilot transfer too next year if we were interested. In fact, we had tried to wrap this up into the Bay Area Regional Reliability Pilot Exchange Study that we are participating in. But at this stage, that had to remain as a desktop study, so we didn't go any further. But that would be a recommended next step. A lot of more steps than this, but these are the major ones. So with that, we would take any questions from the board and welcome your feedback and direction.
Questions or comments from the board?
This project, I don't know if you, Director Wong, if you recognize this location.
Yep.
But this cuts that piece of water there was the Caltrain right-of-way, and this includes the landfill and looks like the old roundhouse property, Brisbane. Mostly this is in the city of Brisbane. A huge property, highly contaminated, or was. I don't know how it is now, but all former industrial, landfill, fascinating piece of property, a lot of money there, potential. I'm curious, I wouldn't be opposed to this if we can make it work. But certainly we want to make it work in our benefit. And I'm sure Thomas would take care of that for us. Not that I don't trust these guys, but this property, if they can pull this off in Brisbane, yeah, it's huge. And they will make a ton if they can pull it off.
If I may add, Director Gunther, for the benefit of the board, we have received similar requests in the past. If you recall, there was the Redwood Shores in particular. This project has actually been voter initiative approved, and the zoning is in place to do this. So it's not a speculative process. When I mentioned we look for third rails, there's no environmental habitat, for example, that is looking to be protected. This is the municipal steps have already been established, and it's ready to go apparently.
Yeah, and if I may interject too, I think you touched on sort of the perimeter of some of the issues that may come into play if we engage on this. A lot of this development is slated for low-income housing, and the city and county of San Francisco is very interested in that. So there's a lot of political momentum in San Francisco, and I think they would love to not have to deal with this, frankly, with their own system and their own processes. So, they're looking for like an ACWD or a Mountain View, somebody who has maybe some surplus ISG to engage. I think the amount of water that we're talking about is something like 1.8 MGD, to give you some scale. But once we engage, I think you may have, it's putting ACWD in a space that we normally don't play. And I just think you need to be aware of that, because there could be, you know, political pressure that makes it difficult to get the best deal in favor of our customers at some point. So I just want you to be aware of that, there's likely going to be pressure on the ACWD board by outside interests if we engage.
I have a few comments.
Director Sethi?
As you know, I was very much opposed to the Redwood Shores development several years back, and I still am. I am much more enthusiastic about this project and the potential benefits for the peninsula communities. So I am supportive of moving to the next steps, at least exploring the possibilities of what we could do. I'm not sure, to Mr. Shaver, 1.8 MGD seems on the low end of what I thought this community would be serving. I've actually followed this very closely, the political developments over the last decade. And I think this actually will come to maturity at some point.
Good observation. I believe the demand is quite higher, but there's a substantial amount of recycled water that's also going to the project, is my understanding. So that's just the quantity that they're looking for in an ISG specific purchase.
And what is that in terms of acre feet?
It's a little over 2,000 acre feet.
Yeah, I think we could accommodate this, and I would just caution my other colleagues on the board, because we went through this before. All kinds of political forces are going to come right at us to either the environmental groups, you know, will all be coming to try and get us to negate whatever kind of agreements are going on. And then we've got the developer groups and the corporations that are involved in wanting to develop this property. And it's really a battle between the environmentalists, and we're talking about the most prominent of the environmental groups out there, Sierra Club and others. So just a, a quick caution, if you put your name on this and you agree to it, be prepared for the onslaught and the political repercussions.
Yeah, I agree, Director Sethi. This is going to be political. I think I'm low with you that it's going to be a lot of heat to make it happen. They already have a major Caltrain station, which basically doesn't even serve half of the site. It's just there, and it also hooks up with the Muni N3 or their Muni 3rd Street line. So the environmentalists will probably be reasonably happy with it because it's got mass transit in 2 locations there already in place. So, and you know, you're basically building on top of an old landfill and an old rail yard. How much other interaction or redevelopment they do in there, they've knocked a lot of the buildings down already. But yeah, I see political pressure coming along to say, make this happen. Hopefully it won't be too much.
Yeah, but you know, this goes back actually decades in the work, right? We're talking maybe 4 decades that this has been under consideration. And the environment, all the top environmental groups in Northern California at large, have been opposed to it and using every technique in the courts and otherwise to try and stall this project. So
I think that's great
the
history.
battle will be coming forward.
That's great history, but we should hear from Director Akbari and Director Wee.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Directors Gunther and Sethi in analyzing the proposal, and the major financial costs associated with at least the initial steps of investigating the offer lay with the developers. So other than staff time, I think we could potentially end up with an interesting proposal. Yeah.
Thank you, Director Akbari. Director Wee?
It's an extraordinary opportunity to make a landmark decision that in the context of the water policy of the state of California, water transfers have been a solution for years that it's been denied us for arbitrary and capricious reasons. And beyond capricious, it was truly ill will on the part of those who want to have no growth. I've described some of these environmentalists as just considering immigrants to be an invasive species, and that they're extraordinary no-growth efforts. Redwood Shores, I support it, and they've denied that based on the water supply agreement. In the context of San Francisco SFPUC, the San Francisco system was limited to 305 MGD, the same level as part of a $6 billion project, the same level of operations they had prior to the spending the $6 billion. They're now running about a little over 200 million acre feet. The environmentalists have come in and asked that 100 million gallons a day be removed from their water supply criteria because they're not using it. We need to use the systems. Water is not a shortfall in California. And with these type of transfers, we don't have issues with drought. So the more we can do along those lines is a rational and responsible mechanism for doing it. SFPUC had past agreements with Modesto that were killed at the last minute. They even had agreements with Oakdale. And Oakdale had some internal political issues and scandals that derailed those efforts. But it's part of the solution. It's a rational process. And many of the other projects we're looking at, and the hundreds of millions of dollars to our district, are not needed if we can establish this type of a water transfer mechanism.
Thank you for your comment, Director Wee. So, Mr. Neiser, I have a bunch of questions for you.
Certainly. And I hope I have some answers for you.
So I know this water has senior water right, but how secure is it in a drought? I mean, we need to wield it back to us, right?
Correct. And the answer is, I don't know. And that's the purpose of further studies. We have been, what we can tell you is what we've been told about the water, which is that this is demonstrated prior use water, which is what's required to wheel it. And that this water is actively being wheeled under an existing CEQA document. But, this is everything's buyer beware. So that's why we would want to hire, the best people to investigate it on our behalf with our interest and answer those questions and find out what the risks and uncertainties would be.
I would also like to know that if we're wheeling the water, who's going to pay for the cost, right? Wheeling water is not free. And we wheel 1 acre for the water. That doesn't mean that we'll get the entire acre fee besides paying.
That's correct. There's losses, there's raw water costs, there's transportation charges, and that would be completely all part of the investigation.
Okay. So the next concern has to do with water quality. We need a high quality San Francisco water to actually blend down our hardness. This water has senior water right, but it's going to come to us through the Delta, which means it's going to pick up all sorts of chemicals that water would have lesser quality and most likely higher hardness than San Francisco water. So there's definitely intangible costs. Well, there's a tangible cost to the district in terms of trying to make us whole. In your sense, what is the project proponent suggesting? Are they just trading water on a one-to-one quantity, or is there some sort of delta so we could make whole in terms of if there's additional treatment required to meet our hardness goal or for chemical removal?
Certainly. To answer, now let me break that up into 2 parts. The first one is it a one-to-one? It's not one-to-one. At a minimum, it has to include wheeling losses. But I would say that is still all subject to negotiations. In the past, we've been offered 2-to-1 plus losses. So, again, we haven't gone too far down the path with the project proponent because we wanted to make sure the board was in agreement before we spent a bunch of time on this. So that's the best answer I can give you that on the quantity, but I would say that's up for negotiation. As far as water quality, this is kind of where this comes into line. When we talk about the smaller 1 to 2 MGD, we're talking about taking it off the top of our contract. So this is where this becomes interesting to me, at least, is that we can reduce our minimum purchase in normal years. And when we look at our analyses, we only take full use of San Francisco, our full quantity, in the driest of years when our local groundwater basin's depleted or the state's not available. And when we're taking water at that level, we have more than enough Hetch-Hetchy water to take to blending, and we're actually taking a fair amount of the top of our contract, the top of that San Francisco capacity, is just coming in directly into our system as a direct takeoff use. Basically, it's just wet water. So in this case, you're absolutely right. It is not at all comparable water quality, but coming off the top of our contract, we still have more than enough to meet our blending needs. And this water will simply go to our treatment plants, which in those situations are actually underserved, undersupplied. But it's an excellent question. Now, if we were talking about, say, 50% of our supply, we would say we need more than 50% at the 15 ppm hardness level just to meet our blending goals. And so that would become a non-starter or require some sort of treatment.
Okay, I think you get the sense that majority of the board is willing to explore this possibility. While you're exploring, beside all my questions, I would like you to also look at a scenario where even if the pilot project works out, what happens if the project does not play out the way we envision and ACWD suffer loss either in water quality or water quantity? Will we be compensated in that particular scenario? Right, my ultimate goal is to protect our customers and our ratepayers. Don't really want to make a deal where we are promised the unicorn and we got nothing.
We got a donkey. Yeah, to be clear, when you say the project, you're referring to the water and ACWDs and not the Baylands project itself.
Not the Baylands project. As far as I'm concerned, I don't really care it's Baylands or whatever. Someone want to exchange water with us, and that's how I am going to look at it from the benefit to the district.
Judy, I actually like donkeys better than unicorns.
Well, if the unicorn going to end up costing our ratepayer a 50% rate hike, I will take the unicorn.
I support what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think what we're talking about here is, as part of this evaluation, we'll also look at risk and potential mitigation of that risk, correct?
Yes, please.
Sure.
And some sort of guarantee or as much as we can get. I know we can't get everything we want, but to the extent possible, we need to protect our customers' interest.
Understood.
Absolutely.
All right, with that, any other questions or comments for staff from the directors? I am not seeing any questions or comments for the board from members of our public. And I'm not seeing a hand. Oh, I see a hand. Mr. Nishimura?
Thank you, President Huang. Let me start by saying I'm a little bit disappointed in the board in the sense that they seem to be more interested, based on the initial comments about development politics versus what I view is your primary responsibility, that is the interest of the customers of ACWD. To first order the recipient of the water, in this case Baylands, it's irrelevant, right? I mean, I would like the board really to consider what is the impact of this proposal to the ratepayers and the customers of ACWD in fulfilling a mission of high quality, reliable water at a reasonable cost. To that point, and I didn't make comments, Director Gunther, notwithstanding Director Gunther's apparent happiness at the hardness map. I mean, ACWD, at least in the northern district, does have a hardness problem. It exceeds the USGS standard for soft water. we're consistently above 150, and I'd like to see it below 120. In addition, we heard from staff on the potential issues of perfluorooctanoic acid and perfluorooctane sulfonic acids and similar chemicals. You noticed from that report that the well water actually exceeds the notification limit, and we happen to squeak right under the wire through blending. And that was through blending of SFPUC water, which is by its source in the geology likely to be pretty clean and soft. So I realize we just talked about this, but I want to reiterate the fact that swapping very clean and soft water for water that is likely to be far less soft or hard and potentially laden with contaminants, including PFAS, and also potentially yet to be regulated, or I guess the technical term is unregulated drinking water contaminants that ACWD may need to address in the future. Again, the lack of clean blending water at the maximum rate could impact the district's ability to service the safe, reliable, and clean drinking water. So I want the board to very carefully consider that when looking into this potential swap. The last comment I'll make on this is, again, the concept of wheeling. I heard that it is a relatively senior wheeling right, but as I've made comments about the semi-tropic water bank, it's really hard to beat a pipe that comes into your backyard, as in the case of Hetchetchy, versus something that is wheeled through a bunch of canals and aqueducts. And just looking at it from a pipe versus a ditch, there seems to be a difference in the reliability. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Mr. Nishimura. Any other members of the public wish to provide comments or address the board at this time?
If I could make, this is John Weed.
Director Weed?
We have a pipe that routinely carries about 200 million gallons a day. The water we're speaking of is less than 2 million gallons a day. So it's less than 1% of the water that's going to be in the pipe when we talk about the specific quality of this element. So those arguments, while they need to be taken a look at in the grand scale, are become minuscule. I would think the bigger issue and the policy issue is the ability to transfer water. And if once we are able to do that in the state which has extraordinary abundance of water, much of the arguments for conservation and others go away. We have water, we have a surplus of water. The issue is the ability to be able to transfer it and get access to it. And this is a wonderful pilot project to do that.
Thank you, Director Weed. Any other comments from the board? If not, I'm just going to say thank you, Mr. Nizer, for the great presentation. And I assume you have enough direction from the board on this item?
Yes, I do. Mr. Shaver, would you like any further questions asked before we wrap up?
I have one additional question.
Right.
Thomas, is there some deadline by the time we have to respond to Baylands or San Francisco? What's our time perspective here on trying to do this follow-up analysis?
Well, they're very eager to proceed with their CEQA, and they need to have a secured water supply to do that. They claim they don't need to have an actual deal in place to proceed. I find that hard to believe. But we've told them loud and clear that this, if this went down the best path ever and ACWD found, and we would only pursue something, of course, if it was an improvement to our condition for our customers, which could be both financial and in terms of reliability. Let's say we went down that path. We told them this will move as fast as our comfort level is involved. So we've been very clear with them that we're not going to be jumping at anything here, even if it looks great.
Just what are you scouting out right now in terms of a timeline?
Well, with this direction from the board, I'd actually like to bring on, we already know who we would like to hire to do the legal and technical feasibility work. And it's sort of within the general manager's level for purchase to pay for. It's not that expensive. We'd like to pursue that pretty soon, actually. And ideally set up a test to transfer that water next calendar year, as we anticipate next. We can only transfer water if it's a poor state water project year, and statistically speaking, we should have another poor year. So at the current 20% allocation, we would need a bumper crop wet year to be above 50% table A. So next year would probably be a good opportunity to transfer that water in a pilot test.
When would you expect to come back to the board?
Well, we would bring, I would assume, committee, some preliminary updates, and then probably when we have an assessment, I'm guessing if we had a full assessment on the water and a desire to actually do a test pilot, I'm guessing that would probably be the appropriate time.
Are we looking at a year from now, or
towards the end of this calendar year? Maybe October timeframe.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Shaver?
Yeah, from my perspective, I think staff has received the input that we need from the board at this time. Obviously, there's a lot of issues here. There is going to be pressure. As Mr. Neiser indicated, the developer is very anxious. There's a lot of money in play here, but we will move through the process carefully and methodically so that we can address the issues that several of you raised this evening, and see where we end up.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Shaver. And I think with that, we can wrap up this item. Thank you, Mr. Neiser. Let's move on to General Manager's report.
Thank you, President Wong. In addition to the item on the agenda, we have a couple of very brief staff reports for you. And while Ms. Marcoux loads up a short presentation, I will just give you one of the items, and that is on April 30th, the state water contractors and DWR negotiators finalized an agreement in principle, or what's called an AIP, for the state water project contract amendment for Delta Conveyance, which is somewhat of a milestone for the group. As you're likely aware, the state water contractors have both urban and agricultural agencies, and the ag agencies are especially cost conscious of any conveyance project. So in order to keep the discussions moving, what this agreement does is allows each state water contractor to opt in or opt out of the Delta Conveyance project, but for only its municipal and industrial water or its agricultural table A amounts. The IIP describes the benefits that a contractor that opts in will receive and makes it clear that the contractors that opt out will not receive those benefits. And the next major milestone will be when cost estimates for the revised Delta Conveyance project will be available, and that's anticipated in the next few months. Then once we have that information, we will be back to the board again discussing the business case for the district's participation. For ACWD, in order to do that, we will conduct an internal analysis of the costs and the benefits, and then any anticipated supplemental funding agreements that will be required for planning work to continue. And Ms. Heides has remained closely engaged on this effort, and she'll be providing that update, I'm sure, once the information is available to you and us. And then Ms. Ipagunta had a brief announcement for you regarding the SUSA Concord project.
Thank you, Mr. Shaver. As you are aware, we have changed our approach to our public outreach events. In the past, we have been doing these public tent events and with COVID-19, the current shelter-in-place conditions, we have changed that approach to virtual town hall meetings, community informational meetings, and we have a new construction project starting in the next few weeks, sometime in mid-August. That's Susa and Concord main replacement project. It's located in city of Newark. So we are holding a virtual community informational meeting for that project, just to provide an opportunity for the public to have some information on the project, and also we'll be discussing the impacts of the project and any mitigation measures that we'll be implementing, temporary or permanent, as part of that project. So the public information meeting is scheduled for June 23rd, which is Thursday, July 23rd, I'm sorry, which is Thursday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. So the reason I wanted to bring this up here is I want to make sure the board is aware of this informational meeting for this main replacement project. And also I'm interested to see if any of the board members are interested in participating or attending this virtual town hall meeting, so that we can make appropriate arrangements for conducting the meeting.
I would be interested. Paul Sethi.
Thank you, Director Sethi. Director Akbari, Director Wee, Director Gunther.
I'd probably be interested in this as well.
Sign me up, John Weed.
I didn't catch the date for the.
Yeah, that's July 23rd,
23rd.
from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
I will likely not be able to make it that day, unfortunately.
Okay, and I probably won't be able to go either. So, but you still have 3, which means that Ms. Ipagunda, you have to notice this as a 4 meeting then, since I think there will be a priority.
Right, that shouldn't be a problem. We can adapt to that change and make this a special board meeting.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, what we'll do is we'll send a follow-up email and confirm.
Okay.
It's just a little easier if it's just a regular meeting, but it's no big deal to make it a special board meeting.
Thank you.
And then I just wanted to provide a brief update on the COVID-19 pandemic and impacts to ACWD. Next slide, please, Gina. So really quickly, confirm the objectives, talk about what's new since June 11th when we last provided an update, and some of the issues that we have been dealing with. Next slide, please. The district's objectives remain the same. You've seen these before. Next slide, please. Since June, we've still been operating our virtual EOC, but we've reduced the frequency. We're doing them now on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so a little longer reporting period. The statistics are still grim, and California is considered a hotspot nationally, especially Southern California. But locally, we're faring a little better in Alameda County, as they have been more conservative in terms of restrictions to try to protect public health. In my case, I've been spending significantly more time communicating with employees and trying to keep employees informed, especially because we're all spread out now more than we have been. And there's a lot of interest among ACWD employees about what we're doing with diversity, inclusion, and equity. And the Black Lives Matter sort of initiative has impacted us, but not that badly. We did have a project scheduled to replace a meter and a valve for Fremont Hospital, which is located on Sundale Drive. As you might expect, even a very short service disruption to a hospital this is a psychiatric hospital, but still a hospital has huge impacts on their operation. And we had it all scheduled and coordinated, and then there were protests on that day. So we changed our operation, postponed the work, and then rescheduled about a week later. And operations field crews did a great job on that particular project. We've also modified our meter reading routes as a result of the protest to avoid that, and our work, our crew work out in the streets. And as I mentioned, staff is really interested in these topics, so we're involving them in our review and potential updates on our policies related to anti-racism, anti-harassment, inclusion, diversity, and equity. And we're calling these discussions Empower Hours, and they're being led by Ms. Salido of Human Resources. And they've been very popular. We've had as many as 35 employees participate, and this is on their own time. This is done, they either have to flex the time or do it during lunch. So the meetings now are occurring about once every other week for about an hour. In terms of the operating environment, the latest significant order from the county health officer occurred in June, and really it was kind of part of this reopening process. I thought you might be interested in seeing some of the elements of that. It doesn't impact our operation at all, except in my view, as society reopens, the risk to our employees increases, and we're trying to remind employees to be vigilant and careful and safe. And we are still doing our safety protocols as a result. Next slide, please. So far, no positive tests, but I am hearing sort of anecdotal stories of it seems like the positives are getting closer. You know, family members, you know, I'm hearing stories about them getting tested positive, maybe not immediate family, but getting closer. Honestly, I think we've been lucky so far. And I think that's one of the reasons why we have to keep reminding staff to keep their guard up, because it hasn't impacted us. Occasionally I remind employees about their face mask, and I know some of the other managers have done that as well. A positive would probably be more effective, but I'm happy to remind employees at this point. Next slide, please. In terms of next steps, we'll provide you with routine updates. Unless there's like major news to share, you will not be hearing from me. I think we've been able to kind of keep our productivity and efficiency, you know, relatively constant given the challenging operating environment. But I think some tasks are a little more challenging now. For example, onboarding new employees. It's not as good when you're doing it virtually. There's just no doubt about it. And you know, there are some other tasks that, you know, starting a brand new initiative is not as easy when everybody is working remotely. But otherwise, I feel good about where we are. I think we're doing a good job keeping the wheels on and providing the services that we do. In terms of admin leave, we haven't used any paid admin leave. Some employees are taking advantage of the benefits that the board approved for COVID-related childcare and using some of the sick leave, but that's what it's there for. And, you know, we just have to make sure that, you know, as few employees as possible, you know, take advantage of it, which can be an issue. But other than that, I have informed employees that are working remotely, don't expect to return to the office until at least September, and probably longer, And our goal is to provide employees that are teleworking with at least a 1 month advance notice to help them plan for an eventual return to work. And then there's some things that we have to do in the office itself to make sure that employees are safe. And we're currently working on our sort of return to work kind of plans, or return to the office. People are still working, they're just not working in the headquarters building. So with that, unless there are any questions, that's all I had to present this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Shaver. Any questions or comments from the board? I am not hearing any. Then I guess we could move on.
John Weed, very quickly. I took the initiative to call Andy Sales of JPIA today, and I had a discussion with him about the what JPIA might do for the water industry in promoting the reopening of our facilities and supporting it. One of those issues is the cost of testing. Should that be part of the protocols when we reopen? And I would hope that the water industry as a group could get support to have FEMA or the state pick up and support the cost for critical utility workers to be able to offset our cost and trying to get up and running again. Thank you.
Well, we are tracking COVID-19 related costs with the hope of eventual reimbursement.
All right, thank you. And JPI itself has developed some protocols for their reestablishment. I think it'd be worth contacting them to get. I asked that Andy publish what they're doing as an organization to come back up, and they're in a different county with a higher threat at current, or with a lower threat than we have. But the process will probably be replicated when it comes to each of the individual district members. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Weed. Any other questions or comments for General Manager? All right, if not, let's move on to item 7, Director's Comment, report on meeting attended and agenda item requests. Director Weed.
Well, I did have the opportunity to look at a webinar of the Special Districts Association on at-large voting, and I encourage the other members of the board to look at it as well.
Thank you, Director Weed. Director Sethi?
I attended the same one and asked Mr. Shaver to encourage the other board members to take it. It's very informative. So I have nothing else to report.
Thank you, Director Sethi. Director Gunther?
No, but I'll talk to Mr. Shaver tomorrow about checking into that webinar. It sounds like it's a good advice.
Thank you, Director Akbari.
Yes, I have a few items that I'll run through pretty quickly. So I have been attending the Alameda County Department of Public Health's now bi-weekly calls to discuss the pandemic. Originally, they were held weekly. Starting from June, they've been moved to every other week. So I attended on June 3rd and June 24th and provided the notes from those meetings to district staff. Just a quick note on that. One of the main members of the Department of Public Health for Alameda County was Dr. Pond. And I think last week, Dr. Pond was promoted to, I don't know her exact title now, but she's essentially the Dr. Fauci of the state of California. And I think that that's a great position for her. And I just wanted to mention that she had led those meetings quite well and kept us very informed. And so I wish her well in her new role, and I'm sure she's going to have some very interesting responsibilities there. And I also think that speaks very highly of how Alameda County has been handling the pandemic, that the governor has entrusted someone from our county to lead the state in the mitigation efforts for the pandemic. Another quick note that I can't remember if it came from one of these meetings, from one of the Alameda County meetings, but I know that the vaccine trials have just started for one of the vaccines developed by a company out, I think in like Massachusetts or something. And so I just wanted to pass along that information that those trials are starting and that they're looking for volunteers. Not suggesting that anyone here should necessarily volunteer, but just wanted to pass along that information. I had one more item that it's slipping my mind. It'll come to me. I'll turn it over to President Huang, and if it comes to me, I'll mention it.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Akbari. Actually, unusually, I do have a request. Actually, I have a request for an agenda item to be placed on the next month agenda to consider a cosmetic upgrade to the boardroom to more reflect our district and the diversity of our staff and our community. I was wondering, would any director second my agenda item request?
I'll second that request.
Any other questions from the rest of director, or maybe we should just save this when the agenda item comes back? Mr. Shaver, can you please make sure that item is on the next agenda?
Certainly. I'm guessing that this involves the photos in the boardroom mostly, or is it other stuff?
I am going to leave it open for staff to be creative. My only caveat is please don't spend too much money, but still ensure the boardroom reflects our district and our staff and our community. This is just such a good opportunity since we're not using that room.
Okay. So I think what we will do is think about what we heard and then come up with some alternatives for the board's consideration, and we'll agendize that item. Heard two directors, so that's what the board will say. Okay.
I got a question or a question regarding the upcoming election. When will we need to decide as to the ballot statement cost decisions? Do we know that yet? Could that be the next board meeting, or is it too late to discuss that? Or
I think as long as we are going to maintain the current policy, the board does not have to engage on that issue. And then it's just a matter of Ms. Marcoux informing the board about what the costs might be when we receive them from the county. But if the board is interested in discussing the district's policies, then we'd have to look into that and get that on the agenda for your consideration.
okay, concern is that, and I'm not sure if it's going to have any impact at all, as far as impact that because they're mailing ballots to everybody, is that going to significantly increase the cost? Now, interestingly enough, I'd be curious too at the same time, if we're looking into this, is the concept of what happens if we move to a district election regarding the same issue. And they may be able to provide us some, or we might be able to draw some information if we know how that's being done. Anyway, that's what I got for now. I'll sit tight.
Thank you, Director Gunther. Any Director Wee, do you have comments?
Yes, a quick comment. The window of opportunity to discuss issues relating to the election may have passed for this election. The registrar of voters needs time to be able to prepare the information booklets for each of the candidates. And those papers could be turned in as early as next week. So
yeah, so Ms. Marcoux has informed me via text that the deadline to change and submit our policy was today. So you're riding this horse for the next election, which is going to be an at-large proposition. Should the district move to district-based elections, my understanding is the overall cost will go down because there's fewer ballots per director.
Yeah, that would be my understanding too. Okay, I'm happy.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you. And Director Akbari, do you want to?
I'm good, thank you.
You're good. Okay. All right. Then with that, I think we're done with director's comments.
President Wong,
Yes, Director Sethi.
could I request, it's 8 o'clock right now, could we have a break until 8:15 to start the closed sessions?
Let me ask Ms. Marcru in terms of logistic. Ms. Marcru, would you prefer us going to closed session and then take a break? Would that be easier for you, or do you want to come back? Sorry, Ms. Marcru, I think you have a bit of internet issue.
I said that might be easier as far as stopping recording and all that, but it's up to the board.
You mean it'd be easier for you if we go into a closed session and first go into a separate room? Okay. Would the directors be willing to do that? So I'll just read in the closed session items and then we'll take a brief break.
Yeah.
So I just want to check with Mr. Miyagi, that is legally allowable, right?
Yeah, that's correct. You can convene into closed session
And then take a break.
put us in the breakout rooms, and then we can take a break and then start up the first closed session in 15 minutes from when we go into closed session. That's totally fine.
Okay, so sorry guys, I have a long list to read. So item A is closed session. 8.1 is pursuant to California Government Code Section 54956.9 D2. Conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, one potential case. 8.2, pursuant to California Government Code Section 54957.6, conference with labor negotiators, agency designated negotiators, Robert Shaver, Jennifer Solido, and Jonathan Wunderlich. Employee organization, Operating Engineer Local 3 and ACWD Operators Association. Item 8.3, pursuant to California Government Code Section 54956.8, conference with real property negotiators, property, N3 Cattle Company consisting of 131 parcels and approximately 50,535 acres in Alameda County, Santa Clara County, San Joaquin County, and Stanislaus County. Assessors' parcel numbers were furnished by owner's representative and are attached to this agenda. Agency negotiators, Robert Shaver and at Stevenson. Negotiating parties, N3 Cattle Company, LLC, Rand Jr. and Rand Jr. TR, assume as trustee. Under negotiation, price and term of payment. So with that is AO2, the board will go into closed session.
Give me a minute.
Okay.
Okay. Jim, you need to accept the meeting. There you go. Okay.
All right, the time is 10:58. The board has returned from closed session for item 8.1 pursuant to California Government Code Section 54956.9 D2. Conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation when potential case, and no action taken. Item 8.2 pursuant to California Government Code Section 54957.6, conference with labor negotiators, agency designated negotiators, Robert Shaver, Jennifer Solito, and Jonathan Wunderlich. Employee organization, Operating Engineers Local 3 and ACWD Operators Association. For the item, directions given to labor negotiators. Item 8.3, pursuant to California Government Code Section 54956.8, conference with real property negotiators, property N3 cattle company, consisting of 131 parcels and approximately 50,535 acres in Alameda County, Santa Clara County, San Joaquin County, and Stanislaus County. Assessors' parcel numbers were furnished by owner's representative and are attached to this agenda. Agency negotiators, Robert Shaver and Ed Stevenson. Negotiating parties, N3 Cattle Company, LLC, Wren Jr. and Wren Jr. Trustee. Under negotiation, price and term of payment. For this item, direction were given to real property negotiators. With that, I will call the meeting adjourned at exactly 11 o'clock, 11 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thank you,
Perfect.
everybody. Have a good evening and a good weekend.
Yeah, thank
You as
you.
well.
Have a great week.